It was a typical Thursday evening when Mark, a young and eager musician, first stepped into the dark alleyway that would change his life forever. He had been struggling for years, playing in small, dimly lit clubs where the crowd barely listened, and the sound of clinking glasses drowned out his music. Mark dreamed of something bigger than any of those dusty clubs. He wanted fame, fortune, and the recognition he knew he deserved. He wanted to be the greatest musician the world had ever seen. One night, after yet another disappointing gig, Mark found himself wandering through the streets, lost in thought. That's when he saw the strange man. He was standing by the entrance of a shadowy building, holding an old guitar case. His clothes were tattered, but his eyes gleamed with a knowing, unsettling light. He smiled as Mark walked past, but something about the smile made the hair on the back of Mark's neck stand up. "You want fame, don't you?" the stranger asked, his voice soft yet filled with a strange power. Mark froze. He hadn't said a word out loud, but somehow the man knew exactly what he was thinking. His eyes narrowed, and he turned to face the man. "How did you—" "I know all about you, Mark. About your dreams," the stranger said, stepping closer. He opened the guitar case, revealing an old Les Paul. "I can give you everything you ever wanted, but there's a price." Mark's heart raced. What could this man possibly offer him? Fame? Wealth? Power? "I'll do anything," Mark said, his voice trembling. "Anything to be great." The man smiled again, his eyes narrowing. "Very well. You will be the greatest musician the world has ever known. Your name will be remembered for centuries, but your soul will be mine." Mark hesitated. The word soul echoed in his mind like a distant warning, but the promise of greatness was too much to resist. He wanted to play before thousands of people, hear the roar of the applause, and live a life of luxury. It was a deal he couldn't resist. With a swift movement, the man produced an ancient-looking contract from his coat. Mark, without thinking, signed his name with a trembling hand. The ink was cold, like the chill that settled deep within his chest. The stranger closed the contract, his eyes gleaming. "Done," he said, and just like that, the deal was sealed. Over the next few weeks, Mark's life changed. He was offered recording contracts, radio shows, and sold-out concerts. His music was being played all over the world, and everyone seemed to adore him. But as his fame grew, so did the emptiness inside him. The cheers from the crowd felt hollow. The gold and riches were just shiny distractions, and his music no longer brought him joy. He was a puppet to the industry, playing the songs that were written for him in front of crowds that only cared about the image he projected. The man with the guitar case had kept his end of the bargain, but something was wrong. The more famous he became, the more Mark felt like he was losing himself. It wasn't long before he started to notice strange things happening. In the dead of the night, when he lay awake in his luxurious mansion, he could hear haunting melodies echoing through the walls. The music sounded like something he had never composed, but it seemed to come from deep within him. Sometimes when he played his guitar, the notes would sound like they were being played by invisible hands. The sensation was unsettling. But the worst part came when he looked into his own reflection. His eyes were hollow, dark pools that no longer reflected the man he used to be. It was as if the life he once had was slowly draining away, replaced by something cold and empty. One evening, After a particularly grueling concert, Mark sat alone in his dressing room. His fingers trembled as he reached for his guitar, but before he could touch it, a soft knock echoed at the door. His heart skipped a beat. No one was supposed to be here. He opened the door, and standing in the shadows was the stranger, the man with the guitar case. His smile was wider now, more sinister. "It's time," the stranger said softly. Mark's heart pounded in his chest. "Time for what?" "Time to pay the price," the stranger replied, stepping into the room. The door slammed shut behind him, and the air grew thick with the smell of decay. Mark tried to move, but his legs felt like they were glued to the floor. What do you want from me?" he whispered, his voice cracking with fear. The stranger held up the guitar case. The lid cracked open, and inside, nestled against the velvet lining, was a single glowing string. "I gave you everything," the man said, "and now it's time to take what's mine." Mark felt a cold hand grip his heart. "No, please," he begged. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know what I was doing." The man stepped closer, his face twisted in an expression of twisted satisfaction. "You knew exactly what you were doing, and now your soul is mine." Mark fell to his knees, the weight of the contract bearing down on him like 1,000 chains. "Please, I don't want to go. I don't want this." But the stranger was unmoved. "You wanted fame. You wanted fortune. Now you'll have them forever. But they come with a price." With a flick of his wrist, the man snapped the glowing string onto Mark's guitar. The sound that echoed through the room was nothing like Mark had ever heard. Deep, mournful, and full of sorrow. It was as though the very essence of his soul was being pulled from his body. Mark screamed in agony as the world around him seemed to fade into darkness. His soul was being taken, piece by piece, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The lights in the room flickered and dimmed, and the man's laughter filled the space like a nightmare. Mark's music, once the joy of his life, had become his curse. In the end, his fame and fortune had been nothing more than an illusion, a fleeting moment in time, paid for by the most precious thing he had, his soul. And as his body crumpled to the floor, the last thing he heard was the haunting melody of the guitar, forever playing the devil's song.